The world is opening up, which means more people are traveling both near and far. And for those who want to trek internationally, there is still some confusion about requirements and protocol and the need for travel insurance when going abroad. Here to share more is Pamela Kwiatkowski, co-founder of Goose Insurance. Great to have you.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so what exactly is travel insurance?
Well, travel insurance is really there's two components to travel insurance. One is you buy insurance coverage to protect the value of your trip. We call that trip cancellation. So the event you book a trip and the event that you can't go due to a covered risk, such as you get ill or you get called to jury duty, the travel insurance will cover you for that expense. Included in trip cancellation is also trip interruption. So what happens if you're traveling and your trip gets interrupted, to bring you back home or to recoup those dollars as well. That's the first portion of travel insurance and probably the most widely known. More importantly, though, is travel medical insurance. When you travel outside of your country, outside of the U.S., you may not be covered for medical expenses, and in most times you're not, particularly when you go on international borders. So it's very, very important that you have travel medical insurance to cover you if you're hospitalized or injured or have some type of medical expense.
And do medical providers in other countries typically take that travel insurance?
Absolutely. As particularly, you need to be savvy in terms of where you buy your travel insurance and do your homework. But it's called a pay direct network. So make sure that the travel insurance that you do purchase will pay direct. Now, keep in mind, if it's just a doctor's visit, some doctors won't allow that, but absolutely hospitalization, make sure that your coverage provides that pay direct capability.
Now, we live in a world of COVID still, so where does that play into it?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's changing daily. We're hearing on the news feed, for example, in Canada, you may not need to be vaccinated to come into Canada. We're waiting for that news, but also the U.S. just lifted the requirements to be tested to return. And there are many, many countries in Europe where they do not have any requirements. The most important thing is to check the country before you go because it's a moving target.
Yeah, it really seems like it. And another protocol, mask wearing and things like that, is that still mandated to go on flights, to go internationally, typically?
It really depends on the airline, but most often is to wear your mask at all times on the airplane. Not so much as airports. We're seeing a change in airports, but absolutely. And for your own safety, it's really important to wear a mask while you're on a flight.
Yeah, that's good to keep in mind. What are some of the common myths about travel insurance? Because I think a lot of people look at it as one of those things, when you buy an appliance or a tool, they say, do you want that 2-year warranty added on? People don't think that it's necessary to get travel insurance sometimes. So what would you debunk as one of those myths?
Well, absolutely, because accident or sickness can happen to us anytime, anywhere. So I think the key thing for a consumer to think about is if you're willing to lose the cost of your trip, and that's something you need to really discern, and you don't buy trip cancellation or trip interruption, you will be responsible in the event that you cancel, and you need to understand the cancellation terms of your flight and or accommodation and other excursions that you may have booked. Most importantly, though, is travel medical insurance. You cannot predict when something may happen, an accident, and healthcare costs around the world, particularly as a result of COVID, have increased. And some countries make it an absolute requirement that you have travel insurance in order to enter. So it's no longer a nice to have. It really is an essential item of your travel planning.
Yeah, and do you have to buy it at the time of making your plans? Is this something that you can do later while you're on the trip, just before you go on your trip?
It depends on the provider. If you're only buying travel medical insurance, you can buy it up to the point of departure. You need to be careful that if you have any pre-existing conditions that you have coverage for that or understand those exclusions. When you're buying trip cancellation or trip interruption, it's always best practice to buy it at the time of booking or when your cancellation penalties come into effect. If you forget it, there are some carriers that will allow you to purchase it after departure, but I strongly recommend you do your planning in advance and get it well in advance, particularly if you're going to a country that requires proof of insurance before you arrive.
And finally, is it expensive?
No, absolutely not. When you think about a day in the hospital, it can go anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000 a day. Travel medical insurance is really inexpensive. And then trip cancellation is really a small percentage of your overall cost of your trip. So when you're planning, and we know this through COVID, that the unexpected can happen, and you want to have your insurance in place before you really need it.
Sure. Pamela, thank you so much. Great advice.
Thank you.
We're back after this.